They say the river remembers every soul ever cast into its flow, and whispers their names in the rain. Tonight, you'll hear the story of Elderbrook, a town where scattering ashes isn't just tradition, it's a warning. Names are called, lives are claimed, and no one is safe. Stay close if you dare.
Welcome to Silent Scream, your home for chilling tales that linger long after the lights go out. Whether you're a long-time subscriber or this is your first visit, prepare yourself, because tonight we're diving into a story where the river itself remembers the dead and whispers the names of those still living. Stick with us, because every word brings you closer to the secrets lurking beneath the surface. Let's begin. The river smelled of ash and wet earth. Every morning, the townspeople of Elderbrook walked the slick cobblestone streets in silence, carrying urns heavier than their own hearts. No one spoke as they tipped the powdery remains of their dead into the black water. It was a ritual older than the town itself, a vow to let the river carry away grief. But the river had memory. They say it whispers in the rain. It started quietly, almost imperceptibly. Names murmured beneath the patter of drops. First, a soft, sorrowful hiss, then unmistakable, the voices of those soon to drown. Children called out before disappearing beneath the current. Fishermen dragged under by hands that felt like the dead themselves. Mothers recognized the voices of their husbands they had just buried, and men shivered when their own names were carried off on the breeze. Tonight, the rain comes heavier than usual, thick and relentless. In the dark reflection of the river, the ashes swirl like smoke. And if you listen closely, you can hear it, the softest, most dreadful sound a living person can hear. Your own name, whispered, beckoning.
Elderbrook had always been a quiet town, wedged between the forested hills and the black water of the river. People joked that no one ever left, and fewer still returned. Life was ordinary in the day, predictable, almost comforting. But nights were different. Nights belonged to the river. Lena moved to Elderbrook 6 months ago, drawn by a teaching job and the need to escape city noise. She had been warned of the river's reputation, murmurs of children lost and fishermen claimed by the currents, but she had dismissed them as superstition until the first night it called her. She was walking home from the schoolhouse under a drizzle that had begun quietly but soon thickened into a relentless pour. The cobblestones glistened beneath her boots. Her reflection wavered in the puddles, and something in the water made her pause. A soft whisper slid through the rain, and she froze. "Lena." Her heart stuttered. The wind shifted. No one was on the street. She shook her head, telling herself it was imagination. But the whisper came again, clearer this time, almost melodic, carrying a sweetness that made her skin crawl. It wasn't her imagination. It was the river. The next morning, she noticed the empty chairs along the schoolhouse fence. Families who had walked past her the previous day now stared at the riverbank, some silent, some crying. She asked the shopkeeper what had happened. He took him. The river, it called his name. A man named Tomas. Last night he had been walking along the river just as she had, and now he was gone. No struggle, no fight, just gone. Lena tried to leave the thought behind, bury herself in lessons and papers, but the whispers began to infiltrate every part of her life. At first, she heard them in the quiet moments before sleep, soft, sibilant names. Then at school, during the lunch bell, faint murmurs brushing against her eardrums. And finally, by the river itself. She began walking its banks, compelled, unable to resist the pull. Rain poured down relentlessly, mixing with ash that floated on the water like snow. The river twisted unnaturally, forming shapes that seemed to reach for her. And from its depths came voices, low, urgent, and insistent. Lena! She stumbled back, dripping over roots slick with rain. Her mind raced. The town had a secret, and the ashes, the whispers, the disappearances, they were connected. She needed answers.
The next day, she found an old woman on the riverbank, hunched and wrapped in layers of tattered shawls, feeding the water scraps of bread. Lena approached cautiously. "They'll take you," she said before she could speak, "if the river knows your name." "Why? What is it?" Lena pressed, but the woman only shook her head, muttering prayers to herself. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. The whispers were louder, closer, almost urgent. She got up and walked to the river, rain drenching her clothes, chilling her to the bone. She peered into the swirling black water and saw shapes, faces, pale and wet, pressed against the surface like they were trying to escape. She recognized some of them. Tomas, a child from down the street, a young woman she had passed on the way home. And then she heard it again, her own name, soft, melodic, curling around her like smoke. Fear gripped her, but curiosity, or perhaps something darker, forced her to step closer. The river surged unexpectedly, washing over the bank, soaking her legs. A hand, pale and skeletal, reached out from the water. "Come," it whispered. Lena stumbled back, heart racing. She ran home, locked her doors, and tried to ignore the call. But sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw faces pressed against the water, heard names carried in the wind, and felt the pull of the river tugging at her soul. Over the next week, she investigated the town's archives. She discovered journals, letters, and newspaper clippings. Generations of Elderbrook had practiced the same ritual, scattering ashes in the river, speaking the names aloud, and offering them to the current. The river took care of the rest. Those whose names were whispered back by the water were doomed. It wasn't random. It wasn't superstition. The river had a memory and a hunger. It demanded repayment, and it remembered every soul that had been cast into its flow. Lena realized she couldn't stay. She had to leave the town before the river claimed her. But the moment she tried, it followed her, whispering her name through the walls of her home, across the streets, even through the forests. The town seemed to shrink.
every alley and tree and shadow conspiring to keep her close. One night, the river's whispers became a chorus, drowning out everything else. Lena stumbled to the bank again, driven by terror and an irresistible pull. The water churned as though alive. Faces of the lost pressed against the surface, mouths moving in silent screams. The current surged toward her. A voice, clearer than all the rest, cut through the chaos. "Lena!" She fell backward, hitting the mud. Rain plastered her hair to her forehead, and then she saw him, Thomas. His face pale and wet, reaching for her, but there was no recognition in his eyes, only emptiness. The river rose higher, faster. Lena scrambled, searching for something to hold on to, but the banks were slick. She felt herself being pulled, and as the water enveloped her, the whispers became her own voice, repeating her own name over and over until she was part of the river's chorus. The town awoke the next morning to the same quiet streets, the same routine. The ashes floated downstream, swirling in the current, carrying the names of the dead and the living yet to come. And in the drizzle, if one listened closely, the river murmured just beneath the rain, a warning, the promise, and a debt no one could escape.
Weeks later, Elderbrook seemed unchanged. Children played near the banks, unaware of the dark memory hidden beneath the water. Shops opened, bells rang, and life carried on. But the river never forgot. Sometimes at night, a soft murmur drifts through the town, carried on the wind, almost too faint to notice. Names, lost, forgotten, whispered back. Some residents pause mid-step, chills crawling along their spines, feeling the pull of something unseen. And in the rain, when the ashes swirl and the current moves with unnatural intent, the river whispers again, inviting, patient, and relentless. Those who hear it know the truth too late. Elderbrook's ritual is eternal, and the water keeps every promise. The river is never empty, it is never satisfied, and it always remembers.
Thank you for joining us in the shadows tonight. If the story of Elderbrook sent shivers down your spine, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a whisper from the dark. Share this tale with someone brave enough to listen. And comment below, what name do you think the river would call first? Until next time, keep your lights on, and remember, the river is always listening.